let's go back to the Star Wars ones. We're looking at Star Wars. We have the first movies that came out, episodes 4, 5, and 6. We're certainly not about Anakin Skywalker redeeming himself. But if you were to take it as an overarching of the 6 episodes that we've seen, it almost seemed like George Lucas was going back through and wedging in that this whole story is about Vader's redemption in the end. You know, that we take him and see how much he falls, and then we see him come back. And it feels really like you've got a shoehorn and you're just shoving it in there, you know, that it wasn't the original idea of the story and that you're just cramming it in. So this could be a very difficult story to put together if you're doing it.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, because it did help, didn't it? Sort of like having that prelude to it all and kind of seeing, you know, where he'd come from and that he was good, and kind of having that backstory. But as you say, it's hard to do. I mean, because you've got sort of like, which we'll talk about in a moment, like the Christmas Carol, Dickens. So it's kind of like he's like a master storyteller. Yeah. So, and he does it really well. So, you know, maybe it is just a difficult thing to do.
And it very well could be, because you have to, because unlike a lot of these stories that we've done, you know, that you're taking a character and trying to, because you want to connect the character. Let me just use the Sleeping Beauty one, for example. And so it's really difficult to say at the end of Sleeping Beauty that Sleeping Beauty, you know, is really the hero at the end of it, even though if you were looking at Booker's plot outline here, she would be, you know, that she falls under the shadow, the threat's gone, then the witch comes back, takes her, and then it looks like everything is won by the evil, and then someone else comes along and miraculously redeems them. And so there's that kind, and then there's the kind that we're talking about with Anakin, where he's gone down a dark road and then is reborn again as a better person. And so it seems like there's 2 separate types of ones, and he did not get specific enough in this to explain between those 2. And so that's where I've had a little bit of trouble really putting together a good lesson out of this.
Yeah, it is hard to unpick those 2 sort of, you know, whether it's from kind of like a hero's perspective or whether it's from the redemption of a villain.
Yeah. Because I would rather read a redemption of a villain story than a hero, that, because the 5th part to this plot, this idea of a miraculous redemption, it's almost like that the whole God in the machine deal, you know, where the old Greek play, you know, where God comes or one of the gods comes down and just sets everything right at the end. You know, how does that happen?
Because if we take kind of like Sleeping Beauty, that does fit into the sort of this structure that kind of like he's outlined, and that she's fallen under the shadow of a dark power, and it's something that kind of like happens to them. Whereas Christmas Carol, which is kind of coined as the best example, is kind of something of like his own doing and something that he becomes himself.
Right.
It fits into the, you know, he has the redemption figures, and, you know, someone comes along to kind of contrast them and show them the error of the ways. So do you see what I'm saying? Like there is those 2.
Well, and then with Dickens, Scrooge redeems himself. Like Scrooge in the end chooses to be redeemed, where Sleeping Beauty has to be saved by a guy who she's met just briefly, you know, pages before or whatever. So we haven't had his arc moving forward. If she, you know, she can't redeem herself because she's under the spell. And so I think I really like the Dickens one better, because we can then identify with this hero who's had a rough go at it, but at the end the hero overcomes, is not miraculously saved by someone else.
Yeah. I think the kind of being saved by someone else kind of has to be a subplot by its nature, because I mean, like Sleeping Beauty, for example, is going to be like asleep for half half of the story, so she can't kind of go off and be the protagonist, so to speak.
Yeah, seriously. So
But
yeah, and so
I think it is an interesting concept, and like you kind of say, I was just thinking of Malfoy in the Harry Potter books.
mhm.
He kind of is influenced by his family, and you can sort of see the good in him throughout, and he kind of falls to their ways, and then he kind of fights it a bit, but then he goes even further, like into the darkness, and then he's kind of redeemed at the end, and he's spoiler. and he's turns out like quite not quite good, but he's sort of seen the error of his ways.
Yeah.
But whether that would have served as kind of like Malfoy and the Philosopher's Stone, I'm not too sure.
Thank you for listening, and come back next week for more. Please visit thebookeditorshow.com for show notes, links to guests, books and extras, and for information on how to be a guest on the show.